Good morning, everybody, and welcome to a weekly Torah portion. This week we study the portion of Toldos. Toldos translates into, in Hebrew, offsprings, children, next generation. The reason is because the second word of the portion begins with the word Toldot. I'm going to start, first I'm going to give a very short overview of what the Rebbe is going to talk about. The Torah begins, Ve'ele, these are the offsprings, the chronicles of Yitzchak, Isaac, the son of Abraham. Abraham begat Yitzchak. Abraham is the father of Yitzchak. All the commentators ask that it's superfluous. If you say these are the chronicles of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham, you obviously, his father is Abraham. Why does the Torah say Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak? The commentators explain there are several answers. Rashi answers, meaning it's the most simple answer, is that Abraham and Yitzchak were resembling each other very, very closely. Yitzchak looked like Abraham. Why? Because the scoffers of the generation would poke fun of Yitzchak, telling him that his father is not Abraham but Avimelech. Remember, Avimelech took Sarah for a night. And only a year later, she became pregnant because part of this, the Medrash tells us, part of the reason she was taken is so that Abraham should pray for him to get cured and is for his maidservants to be pregnant, to be able to use all their body parts properly. And but the Jewish law tells us that if you have any need and you ask God for the similar need from somebody else, God will answer your needs also. So God made make it around so that he should pray for Avimelech and his household. And by doing so, Sarah became pregnant. So now Yitzchak is born. So people say Avimelech is the father. And that's why God made his resemblance to resemble Abraham. So no doubt that it is his father. A question that many commentators ask, Yitzchak is not the first to resemble Abraham. Anybody knows who else resembles Abraham? Lot, very good. Anybody else? Eliezer. Lot, the reason Abraham distanced himself is because Lot would go and steal and let his animals graze in someone else's fields, and people will blame Abraham for doing that. Eliezer, when it comes to find Rivka in last week's Torah portion, Lot right away turned to him and says, come on, blessed man, come on into the house. Why did he say that? Because he looked to him like it's Abraham, his uncle. It looked to him like his uncle. Because Eliezer resembled Abraham, and it's mentioned some other places. So why is this that God made a miracle? And the simple answer is, again, there are several answers. The commentators explain that Lot looked like Abraham. Eliezer looked like Abraham, but nobody resembled exactly in a way that you get lost and unable to distinguish between the two. When you look at Yitzchak, you're sure it's Abraham. When you look at Abraham, you're sure it's Yitzchak. Unlike Lot, once you get closer and you let him start speaking, you see that it's a different person. It's very easy. It's like children of the same family that they resemble each other, but they're still not the same. You can tell the difference. Yitzchak and Abraham, even though there was 99 years apart, yet they were exactly looking the same. Yes, Harry?
Yaakov asked God to age people so they should be different.
Abraham asked. Abraham Zaken. The first time appears the word old is by Abraham in last week's Torah portion. He prayed because people will get mixed up. When Yitzchak would serve his father, offer him a chair, order the food at the restaurant and serve him, and people would say to Abraham, why do you let your brother do all the work and you're not lifting a finger? So it was difficult for Abraham to be next to Yitzchak. And therefore he has to get old. That's the first one, the first man that got old. Yaakov has to get sick before he dies. Until that time, people will just drop dead. There was no such thing as sickness. Yes?
Asked God to make a differentiation. It didn't do it.
Much, only because they were born, Yitzchak was born to resemble Abraham perfectly the same.
So when did Yitzchak change? Everybody looked like the same.
Well, he looked older, but they still looked the same. They both look the same, except by now you can distinguish between the two by their age.
So Abraham asked,
Abraham had white hair. Why do old people get white? Why do they get white? He didn't ask to turn white.
Has to be old.
And so that's a different discussion. But Abraham looked older than Yitzchak when Abraham asked for it, but still they look the same. They look very similar.
So Jacob asked for get sick, right? Has to be able to get
Yes.
sick. Nothing with Yitzchak though.
Nothing to do.
Abraham was old, Yitzchak, Jacob was sick, but Yitzchak got in the middle, didn't ask for anything.
Nothing.
Okay.
So this is the question. Now comes the Rebbe and he's bringing out a question that most commentators ask, and that is, if you want to tell me that God had created a miracle to make Yitzchak face resembles that of Abraham, so that no scoffers can spread their evil words, why do we, and that's why it says Abraham fathered Yitzchak. In other words, these are the chronicles of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. There was no doubt that Abraham was the father of Yitzchak by looking at them. That's why the repetition. Ask the Rebbe, why now? Now Yitzchak is already 40 years old, 50 years old, 40 at least. It should have been mentioned immediately after he was born. It shouldn't have come here. And here is the way the Rebbe, I'm gonna, should I move on or should I? So let's, I'm gonna read the first paragraph, then I'll skip some of them so we can cover the whole idea. These are the chronicles of Yitzchak, the son of Abraham. Abraham fathered Yitzchak. Our sages explain that the purpose of the seeming redundancy in the verse, that is, restating Abraham fathered Yitzchak, is to teach us that not only was Yitzchak the son of Abraham, but that it was also evident to all that Abraham fathered Yitzchak, because his facial features resembled Abraham's. The scoffers of that generation were spreading rumors that Sarah had been impregnated by Abimelech, and in order to prove their words false, the Holy One, blessed be He, caused Yitzchak's facial features to resemble those of Abraham. I'm going to show you another question. Why does it say that the scoffers of the generations? It should have been said the liars of the generations, because after all, it was a lie. It was a lie. And there are several answers to address that. But anyway, the Medrash says, and based on the Talmud, and the Talmud says that it was to address the scoffers' rumor, to make sure that everybody no doubt that Abraham is the father of Yitzchak. That's why the repetition. The various commentaries on the Torah have already raised the question. It similarly would have been appropriate for the Torah to have thought this concept that God repudiated the words of the scoffers who said that Sarah has been impregnated by Avimelech directly following the account of Yitzchak's birth. Why wait for now? Why did the Torah wait until this point, the beginning of Parshat Toldot, to repudiate their statements? Simple question, yes? Well, why? If you want to teach me that God made a miracle to make sure everybody knows who's the father, do it right when he's born.
How can he look exactly like his father when he's born?
They also, so when he was 3 years old, 4 years old, sure, you can resemble. The above leads to the conclusion that God, by the way, I'm going to address this question, and it was on my mind the whole time. I now was in Israel with my son, Ari. When I walked into my family, we did one Shabbat of family unity, where everybody in Israel got together. There were over 70 assembled with my father and mother. This was the last time my father, of blessed memory, had most of the family together. And every one of my sisters, some of which did not see him they saw him at the wedding of Baruch and Zev, maybe. So 10 years ago, they saw him when he was 2 years old. They all says, gosh, he's Mendy. He's like Mendy. And at first I looked at myself and I said, Mendy was much different than Ari. But then I said, just imagine when Mandy was that age, and it was perfect to the point that it was resembling. So for someone who sees them every day, and as they develop, you may lose that because you see Mandy now is much older. The same is when I went back, I was in Maine, Israel, after my nephew died. Now, I knew him. I used to talk to him a lot, and the picture of him, he has a younger brother in yeshiva that's 19 years old, that's 20 years old. And when I look at him, I kept forgetting to name him Meni. His name is Menachem Mendel, and not Israel, because he resembles his other brother that's 24. So much so that it was crazy. Every time you'd walk in the room, I would say, this is the one who died. And I told that to my sister, and she kind of, no, they're much different. They're not the same. So for someone who lives with somebody all the time, they may not see it. So when Yitzchak was born, immediately resembled his father, perhaps when his father was the same age. And therefore, for someone to look at him and says, oh, that's the father, that's Abraham. Yes.
Esau was born with a full beard and everything that came out of the mother's womb.
Right.
Esau.
I have a picture of it, of the birth of Esau and Yaakov. No, that's a defect. No, Yitzchak was not born like Esau with beard and hair. He did not, but not with the beard and everything else. Here is the picture of when they were born. The twins. Here are the twins.
Where'd you get that?
It's from the hospital.
Yeah.
The above, it's this week's Torah portion, by the way, right? And they're born this week. The above leads to the conclusion that God caused Yitzchak's countenance to resemble that of Abraham's for a twofold. In other words, the question is why God waited to share that with us now? Why not when they're born? Because the resemblance had another purpose, not just that to dispel the scoffers' rumors, but something else about Yitzchak. And that is the topic of our discussion. For a twofold purpose, in addition to repudiating the words of the scoffers, making Yitzchak's countenance resemble Abraham's also communicates a fundamental message that continues to remain relevant even after the scoffers' words were proven false. One that relates to the very essence of Yitzchak's spiritual characteristics and his path in divine service. Says the Rebbe, the reason God created the face of Yitzchak to resemble, his countenance to resemble that of Abraham, has twofold, not only to repudiate those scoffers, but also to tell us about the essence of Yitzchak. The next few paragraphs, the Rebbe points out that this week's Torah portion, Toldos, is all about Yitzchak. The portion before is what? Chayei Sarah. It's all about Abraham. Sarah dies, and Abraham, who he married, how he takes care of his son, and the Akedah. It's all about Abraham. The next portion, Vayetze, is all about Yaakov. The only portion that is specifically about the life of Yitzchak is this week. So when we call it Toldot, offsprings, it's also about his essence of who he is. Therefore, at the beginning of the portion, the Torah wants to tell us, you should know that Yitzchak resembles that of Abraham because it will share or will be able to spill out to every part of his life, because this is all about the life of Yitzchak. Did I make myself clear? Let's move on. Says the Rebbe, number 2 on the bottom of page 320. We find two contrasting thrusts in the Torah regarding Yitzchak's fundamental character traits and his path in divine services. If you read about Yitzchak, you'll find two polar opposites about his connection to God. As is well known, our patriarch Yitzchak is identified with the attribute of fear. Therefore, the Torah speaks of Pachad Yitzchak, the one Yitzchak feared. He feared God. In this lies the difference between the divine service of Abraham and that of Yitzchak. Abraham's divine service was characterized in the attributes of love and kindness. Thus, the prophet speaks of Abraham who loved me, whereas Yitzchak's divine service was characterized by the attribute of awe and fear. So if you look at Abraham's service with God, it's all about kindness and love. If you look at Yitzchak, we call his name Pachad Yitzchak, fear of God, awe, respect of God. Nevertheless, there are a number of factors that reflect a connection and association between Yitzchak and the attributes of love and kindness as well. Among them, and the rabbi is going to bring 4 proofs that Yitzchak's service of God must be connected to love and not fear. These are 2 polar opposites. On one hand, you distinguish Yitzchak from Abraham in the way he served God out of awe and fear, as opposed to Abraham. On the other hand, everywhere you look at Yitzchak's DNA, you will find love and joy and connection to God. Here are the 4 enumerated very briefly. Number 1, and when anybody knows when Yitzchak was born? He was born on Passover. It is well known that the 3 major holidays, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, are connected with each one of our forefathers. Pesach is connected with Abraham. Shavuot is connected with Yitzchak, and Sukkot is connected with Yaakov. So says the Rebbe, Yitzchak was born on what holiday? Pesach. Pesach is connected to Abraham, all about joy and happiness. So how can you call him Pachad Yitzchak? So we see the opposite. Another one, the word Yitzchak, his name. What does Yitzchak means? The root of that word? Laughter. It's named after Sarah was laughing about becoming pregnant at an old age. In other words, the whole essence, his name, as we know in Hebrew, the name brings the energy to the person. That's why the Hebrew name is very, very crucial. And therefore, his name, laughter, joy, which is not awe and respect. Number 3, if you read about Yitzchak's life, the Torah in this portion is specifically bothered to mention that he spread out and he grew financially, exponentially, in a way that no one else of the forefathers are mentioned like. And that represents kindness, not strictness. Kindness is all about giving and expanding and getting bigger. And that's what his life is all about. The Torah says, "Vayigdal ha'ish me'od, vayad ki gadal me'od." The Torah says he grew up tremendously. He's not a millionaire, he's a billionaire. And the Torah says that he planted 1 year at a year of a famine, and it produces 100-fold. In other words, the expansion, financial expansion of Yitzchak is only about chesed. It's not about gevura. It's not about restrictness. And number 4, the way God turned to, as we say in the Haggadah, God tells Abraham that his seeds, that his children will grow and be so numerous like the sand of the earth and the star of the skies. Who was the one that is carrying this blessing? Yitzchak. Yitzchak, not Ishmael. Meaning Yitzchak represents for Abraham expansion without limitations. Says the Rebbe, on one hand, you call it Pachad Yitzchak, you call it awe and restrictions. On the other hand, you see his name, the way God blessed them, the way he is bringing to Abraham the blessings, and the day he was born on Passover, all representing chesed and kindness. So how do you satisfy this? This kind, it's not a contradiction, but it's 2 opposites. And this is what the Rebbe says. The Rebbe says that perhaps it is possible to say that each one of them had also the opposite. Abraham was kindness, but he also had strictness. And Yitzchak was strictness and awe, but he also had love. Says the Rebbe, that doesn't make sense. Nevertheless, this explanation is not entirely satisfactory. Why? The fact that the very name Yitzchak is universally and forever identified with the concept of happiness and compels us to say that this attribute reflects Yitzchak's fundamental orientation and not merely a secondary dimension of his character. And the Rebbe goes on with details. In other words, what the Rebbe is saying is by Yitzchak, the idea of chesed, kindness, expansion, great blessings, The manifestation of the blessing of God to Abraham that is expressed through Yitzchak, that he was born on Passover, means that the idea of this kind of trait is a fundamental foundation of what Yitzchak is about. By the way, this will help us understand why the Torah repeats itself to tell us that he resembles that of Abraham, because the idea of kindness, the nature of Abraham, is expressed in Yitzchak in the very essence of who he is. And here is the Rebbe's explanation. The Rebbe is going to go layer deeper and another layer deeper, and I believe there is a third layer. Here is the first answer. Page 324. To offer a possible explanation. One of the distinction between love, the attribute of Abraham, and awe, the attribute of Yitzchak, is that love engenders a relationship of intimacy between the one who loves and his beloved. However, it does not cause the one who loves to become batel, to nullify his own being for the sake of his beloved. On the contrary, through love, the identity of the one who loves and the intimate relationship between him and his beloved becomes accentuated. In other words, love, if I love somebody deeply, I connect with that person, but I do not nullify. I do not lose my identity, quite the opposite. Because I enjoy it, so my identity is accentuated. My identity is in the center of the relationship, therefore I love that person. Is that simple to understand? No, Ali?
I could love somebody so much that I have the big tool, that it's not about me, it's all about her.
That's not real love. That's called respect and honor, as we'll see in a moment. That's the opposite of love. And by the way, the reason it's crucial what we're discussing, next week, the JLI is when we have arguments. How do we deal with arguments in a relationship? And these two traits will come into play as a central theme of the discussion. By contrast, awe engenders bitul within a person. It causes them to forego his personal boldness and sense of self to such an extent that his identity becomes subsumed within that of the one whom he is in awe. These concepts can be illustrated through the contrast between a son and a servant. Just a minute, before we go into a son and a servant, did you understand the difference? Respect and honor of somebody causes somebody to nullify himself before that person, and therefore they are connected on a much deeper level because there is no self-centeredness. It's not something that I enjoy. It's something that I have so much respect for that person. He saved my life. He did for me so much. Therefore, I will put him before me. I put him as the center of the relationship. And the rabbi says, let's explain, and we're going to summarize it, the difference between a son and a servant. The son loves his father, but he loves his father, he feels it, and he has his own identity. Therefore, the bond is not complete. How do I know the bond is not complete? Because when the father asks the son to do something, if it's a great inconvenience or it's too costly, time-wise, whatever, the son may choose not to do. When it comes to a servant, on the other hand, he's going to do it out of respect or fear, but we're not going to talk about fear, out of respect and awe to the master. So what does the servant say when the master said to him, go 5 a.m. to the airport for me? No doubt, I'll do it. Yes, sir. In other words, the bond in awe and respect is a much stronger than the bond through love. When it comes to love, my self-centeredness is in the center, as much as, at least as equal as a partner. When it comes to respect and honor and awe, the other person's is in the center stage. The spotlight is on the other person, and I'm there to nullify myself. This is the difference between a son and a servant. Says the did I make myself clear so far? Says the Rebbe. That when it comes to loving God, when it comes to God, love God, it is out of my feeling the greatness of God, and I want to connect to God. Therefore, my connection to God is measured, is limited based on my understanding of God, based on my relationship that I establish with God. When it comes to connecting to God out of respect and awe, then I put God in the center. I am not going to be totally nullified because I must be in existence. But God is the one who does everything. And I am there totally nullified to God because my identity is not as a servant. And therefore, the bond when it comes to not other humans, between human beings, it's not proper because a servant relationship may be abusive. But between God and a human, God is dictating, so to say. It's a one-way coming down relationship from God to us. And therefore, that relationship is a far deeper and much greater. So the blessing is much more. And this is what the rabbi says. When God created the face, I'm giving you a summary. When God created the face of Yitzchak to resemble that of Abraham, he wants to, and it appears at the beginning of this week's portion, which is all about Yitzchak. It comes to teach us, even though Yitzchak was a complete sacrifice, never left the Holy Land, very holy man, married only one wife, he couldn't marry more than one, all is great. But remember that at the end of the day, he expanded farther than any one of the forefathers financially. He is named Yitzchak, laughter, because connecting to God out of respect and awe allow them or open them into a blessing from God far greater than that of the kindness of Abraham. So at the end of the day, he received, because awe is drawing back, staying far, staying a little bit distant. Love is about bonding, connection. Remember that when it comes to God, the respect and awe gifted them with a blessing of expansion and blessing far greater than that of Chesed, and in that way, that's the resemblance to Abraham. Yes.
People rich beyond compare.
What?
God made the three others rich beyond belief.
Right. But by Abraham, by Yitzchak, it is stated clearly more than Abraham and Yaakov. Vayigdal ad ki gadal me'od. Me'od meaning beyond. Now, by the way, I want to address the Rebbe is talking about a few other points that I'm skipping. One of them is that all of the forefathers were Merkava, were a chariot to God, meaning they are totally nullified. They included in themselves all of the traits. However, they are chosen by God for one of specific way to be expressed. So Abraham was chosen by God to express love. Yitzchak was chosen by God to express awe. Abraham had awe too. Yaakov was chosen by God Tiferet, which is a combination of the two. But he had each one specifically, uniquely. But that's what they reflected in their life, through their life. So because Yitzchak was chosen to reflect awe and respect, it's spelled out in a far greater blessing than the Avraham and Yaakov. And the name is Yitzchak, laughter, which resembles love and connection. You understand?
Yes.
What's the other point?
All others had love and fear.
Of course. So Yafe Shekivanti. The Rebbe says that's why we see in Shmoneh Esrei, we say V'nafshi ke'afar lakol tiyeh. May my soul be like the dust in front of everybody. Ptach libi b'toratecha, and open up my heart in you, Torah. I don't understand. If you want to be the dust, how is it that you're praying that you understand the depth of Torah? Depth of Torah, you cannot be if you lowered yourself. But this is the type of law in yourself when you connect to God out of respect and then that will enable God. The channels are not the channels that you created 4-inch, 6-inch. God's channels are wireless. So the channel will bring so much that they will open up the Torah that with my mind I'll never be able to reach. So in other words, bitul, nullification, the idea of awe and respect of God as opposed to love, will open up my heart into God's Torah in the way that God will bless me and God will bring me, which is far, far greater than the biggest channel that I can create on my own. That clear? Says the Rebbe, all of the above, I'm on page 328, concepts can be linked to Yitzchak. The awe manifested by Yitzchak was a preliminary step that made him fit for experiencing the joy and opening of heart in his divine service that are engendered through the preparatory stage of Bitul. He was therefore named Yitzchak, a name associated with laughter and joy that reflects the expansive spiritual self-expression, indeed self-expression that knows no bounds. For as is well known, joy breaks through all barrier. The awe and bitul Yitzchak manifests leads to the revelation of intensified divine vitality, a genuine expansive expression of holiness as reflected by the request, open my heart with you, Torah. The rabbi is going to go into a much deeper explanation, but I don't think that we have the time. And I also touched upon it, and that is God chose each one of the forefathers to reflect one of the attributes. Yitzchak was chosen to reflect awe and respect, and therefore, how did it manifest itself? That his expansion was beyond 100-fold. You don't find by Yaakov it says that he expanded greatly, but you don't find 100-fold. You don't find the richness to the level of Yitzchak, and the reason is because when you bind yourself to a bond of awe and respect to God, God is the one who is providing, and therefore God is the one who created the channel, and therefore God is giving according to his measure, which is far greater than any human can reach, as opposed to Abraham. That's why the beginning of the Torah portion says the Rebbe, the Torah says, Eile Toldos, these are the chronicles of Yitzchak, son of Abraham. Abraham begat, Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak. First was for Avimelech, for the scoffers about saying that Avimelech is a father. But then when you want to know about the essence of Yitzchak, realize that the connection and the bond to God through Yitzchak brings to joy, brings to expansion and greatness far beyond even that of Abraham. And that's the greatness of the nature of Gevurah, expansion and blessings. I hope we were able to understand the reason now. Thank you very much, and have a good Shabbos, everybody.